we were talking about Barbara selling in Minnesota, Chapter 3, and how Barbara's obtained a job working at Walmart. We talked about how Walmart's constantly rearranging items in the women's department so that Barbara can never actually learn where all the clothing is because it's constantly being shifted around. So she can't even use the IQ she has to her advantage. You know, instead she has to keep looking at the brand name of an item and trying to find out where it goes and constantly moving around the women's department trying to put back items that potential customers have tried on in the dressing room and then discarded into a cart. What a horrible job. We also talked about how Barbara's living environment in Clearview it really sucks. She's paying $265 per week, which if you engage in the mathematical computation of 52 weeks per year, she's paying about $13,000 per year. It's a crappy hotel, no refrigerators, no stove, right? Sometimes two or more people are even sharing the same bed. Barbara notes that, and of course, she says, this is no gay tryst, right? But she even notices one sleeping in the room and the other's napping in the van outside, because of course, you know, they would never sleep in the same bed together because they'd probably get made fun of by all the conservatives who are, you know, would call them gay and all that kind of stuff, because, you know, clearly the wealthy upper-class conservatives have nothing better to do with their time than think about how two guys who are barely making enough money to live must, by sharing the same bedroom together, clearly be gay, right? Because Santorum could never imagine such another conceptualization between his little hissy fits he has whenever he doesn't get his own way. And other people like Santorum too, right? Reverend Falwell, who else? You know, all of these different conservatives who are caught, in fact, themselves engaging in homosexual activity, right? That's why they're probably so obsessed about it, because it's got to be illegal or else they're tempted to engage in that activity. Which I think is absurd. I think two people who wish to live together and care about one another should be able to make their own decisions for themselves. And it's none of our business. But anyway, Barbara talking about Clearview and the dwellers at Clearview, she notes, as far as I can tell, this is page 160, as far as I can tell, the place isn't a nest of drug dealers and prostitutes. These are just working people who don't have the capital to rent a normal apartment. When we talk capital, we mean monetary capital, right? Even the teenagers who worried me at first seemed to have mother figures attached to them, probably single mothers I hadn't seen before because they were at work, right? Page 163, Barbara describes an act of kindness shown to her by a fellow employee. In other words, a fellow member of the proletarian class, right? Page 164, Barbara notes how customers are discourteous by not putting items back where they belong, but leaving the items for the sales associates like Barbara to put back. Barbara writes, the customers' sloppiness and idle whims make me bend and crouch and run, right? And on page 177, Barbara notes, in real active psychoanalysis here, Barbara realizes, and I quote, that most of the people I pick up after are mothers themselves, meaning that what I do at work is what they do at home, pick up toys and clothes and spills. So the great thing about shopping for most of these women is that here they get to behave like brats, ignoring the brawling babies in their carts, tossing things around for somebody else to pick up, right? I think Barbara's very perceptive on that point, right? Shopping is a way for other people whose lives suck, like mothers having to raise all these children that really, in all honesty, they don't even need to have because there's so many people in this country anyway. You know, why have more children? Of course you're supposed to, because that's what bourgeois society tells you you're supposed to do. But anyway, page 167, Barbara notes how she starts to form this emotional attachment with her clothing, right? That's what happens when you work as a sales associate in Walmart long enough. Your mind starts to get, you know, you become mentally, well, your mind is mentally altered. Barbara's forming this emotional attachment with her clothing. It's a way she has to deal with her situation, her sucky life. On page 170, going back to this problem with rent, Barbara notes that to find affordable rent, and I love this quote, I either need to find a husband or a second job, like some of my coworkers, right? Because you can't live on your own and only have one job. It's a low-wage job. Can't do it, so you either have to get a husband or you got to get a second job. And then Barbara cites a statistic that says, and I quote, in the Twin Cities at the time of my stay, about 46,000 working families were paying more than 50% of their income for housing, and surprisingly 73% of these families were homeowners hard-pressed by rising property taxes. So again, you know, If you're a low-wage worker, you're going to pay a lot of money on housing. But of course, all the homeless are only drug addicts. That's what the Republicans tell you. All the Democrats are also pretty unkind to the poor anymore, too. Because they're both controlled by the corporate capitalists and internationalist bankers. But anyway, that's just my opinion. But I think it's absolutely the reality of American society. Barbara notes on page 171 that after staying at Clearfield for a while, Clearfield's basically like a dorm room in college, right? It wants $365 a week to allow Barbara to remain in its squalid conditions, I mean the sewage and all that other stuff. But think about this, $365 a week is $20,000 a year for Barbara to remain in a crappy bedroom, like a college dorm room, without even having a stove. What a absurdity. So Barbara on page 175 talks about how she goes and she moves into the Comfort Inn, which cost $5.05 less on a daily basis than what she was paying for the rat hole in Clearview. And she uses the word rat hole. I'm not making that up. She uses that term. And I think it is a rat hole, but she uses it. On page 173, then, Barbara notes that Walmart, like many other low-wage employers, holds back her first week's pay. Right? So she's having a difficult time now. Even she says, in almost 3 weeks, I spent nearly $500 and earned only $42 from Walmart for orientation night. There's more coming eventually. Walmart, like so many other low-wage employers, holds back your first week's pay, but eventually will be too late. Right? They'll eventually pay you back, but you need the money now for your rent. And when I first read that, this was my response. I'm going to say, I said to myself in my mind, that is so fucking wrong when those low-wage people need their money. I mean, the fucking audacity of those fucking corporate capitalists who are just taking their wage power and abusing it. The absurdity. The horror of that. These people don't care about the low-wage workers. They don't care about people who have low IQs. They're just exploiting them. Maybe it's partly these low-wage workers' fault for not getting a good education, but how can you blame them when you have a media in this country that for 18 years of a child's life teaches a child that to be stupid is cool, to work diligently is absurd? You engage in that kind of mind control, yeah, a lot of young people are going to buy into it. They don't have the IQ needed to understand that that is a way that these corporate capitalists and internationalist bankers can make sure that they have a lot of low-wage zombies working for them and people who can't think and can't reason. Which is one of the reasons why I create these videos, to try to say to people, wake up. That's what happens in America. We have a culture where we encourage our children to be as lazy as possible when they're growing up, so that they're not worth anything when they're adults and can be paid slave wages and will in fact consent to slave wages. But anyway, page 174, Barbara notes that the poor eat unhealthy food because they don't have any other choice. They can't afford other food. On page 183, Barbara notes that Walmart tries to get out a paying wage and a half for overtime whenever possible. And if you try to get that overtime, they'll try to fire you for something that you didn't do, or maybe something that you did that wasn't really a fireable offense. Like they'll say you swore, for example. Walmart employees can't swear. You swore, you're getting fired. It's not about the fact you demanded 1.5 times your overtime, right? Your regular wage for overtime. Right? That's the way it works in corporate capitalist America. Page 186, Barbara notes that Walmart is essentially a tedious, repetitive job in which nothing exciting happens. How exciting is it to keep putting clothes back on a rack, right? It's a great demand on an IQ of 130, isn't it? Right? Yeah, not really. But anyway, page 187, Barbara writes, what you don't necessarily realize when you start selling your time by the hour is that what you're actually selling is your life. Well, I do realize that, Barbara. So does Marx. Marx talks about how we are wage slaves and we sell ourselves. I would read some of Marx's philosophical doctrine. It's brilliant. Marx may have made errors, I agree, but Marx has some brilliant philosophical doctrine about how we're wage slaves, how we're alienated from ourselves, alienated from our work, alienated from one another, right? That's the kind of lives we live. Of course, on page 191, Barbara hopes the Walmart employees will stand up to the corporate management. They'll demand a union who will work to ensure them living wages. Of course, Walmart's against giving any such union. But Barbara hopes the Walmart employees, at which she's working, that they'll rise up and they'll demand a greater wage instead of giving it all to the corporate shareholders, right? And of course, also to the family that founded Walmart. Because they were so brilliant to come up with the idea of Walmart, right? Even though I could have come up with the idea. In fact, I think we should do all of our shopping for the most part online and have just big factory warehouses where we, at the beginning of the year, place our orders in for what we want to be delivered to our homes, and it gets delivered at the beginning of the year, and then we don't have to worry about buying much during the whole year. Yeah, I know it's controlled. It's controlled central planning, but that's what I do when I go off to college. I don't go off to shop during my semesters at college. I just buy everything I need before I go off to college, and I never go shopping. I don't need to. I know everything I need to have for the most part. Maybe a few things come up that I don't know, but for the most part, I buy everything I need at the beginning of the semester. I never go shopping during the entire semester. I spend my semester working and reading and writing and researching. But anyway, in my next video, I'm going to talk about Barbara's evaluation of her experience in her in Florida, in Maine, and in Minnesota. Thank you for watching.